All right, looks good. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Mental Health Monday here on Even Tacos Fall Apart. I am super excited to have you here. As always, if you are joining us live either on Twitch or YouTube and you want to engage tonight, feel free to just pop any questions into the chat and we'll make sure to address them while we are here and live. Today, I am honored to welcome Malisa Hepner. Malisa is a therapist, podcast host, and speaker who has walked through foster care, addiction, incarceration, and profound loss and really transformed that pain into a powerful practice of healing and resilience. She hosts two podcasts, Emotionally Unavailable and Unquiet Soul, and creates healing workbooks that help people move beyond overthinking, perfectionism, and fear. And as someone living with complex PTSD, which y'all know is also a big part of my story as well, Malisa brings both professional expertise and raw lived experience to guide others in reconnecting with themselves and stepping into their own light. So Malisa, thank you so much and welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
Absolutely. I'm excited to have you. And if y'all are looking to connect with Malisa anywhere, I've got a couple of links for you. Website, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and then there's a link tree for a whole bunch of other links. If you're looking for another way, if you're looking for another way to connect, feel free to click through on any of those and you'll know what I always say, engagement is key here. So if you click through and you connect, make sure you like a post, make sure you leave a comment. All of those things are going to help bring that visibility to Malisa and also help get her into your own algorithm too. So our main topic tonight is going to be resilience, healing, and self-compassion. But Malisa, I would love to start off with just understanding what made you become interested in specializing in mental health to begin with as a therapist, and then what inspired you to start sharing your own story through your content and your speaking engagements.
Yeah, I think honestly, the answer kind of is all the same. So because of my super traumatic childhood, it was, I'm pretty woo-woo and I've always been really drawn to the woo-woo. I think even growing up in a super religious household, but in childhood I would have called this like the God that I was taught about as a child, but so I had addict parents, and there was a lot of just back and forth, specifically with my mom because she was really, I mean, she had us so young and she had three children back to
Mm,
back to back. Like my brother was born in May of 79, I'm June of 80, and then my other brother is June or August of 81.
mm-hmm.
And so very small children at a very young age with her own history of trauma because of my grandpa, and just my dad and her were in a very tumultuous relationship, so many substances. And so she really was trying a path of sobriety her whole life. And so there was a lot of back and forth. And in the 80s, reunification was done very differently. So it was like, you have 5 seconds of sobriety. Here's these kids back. Especially for my grandma, who's already raised five, started when she was 15 and a half with an abusive husband. She was done. So she's like, here's
Yeah.
the babies. Let's take them back. And it was never good. I mean, seriously, she'd get us back. And then that was the first, that first night she'd be back on something because, I mean, parenting is hard. Let's be real.
Yes.
And so, she really, really struggled with her own demons. And I was probably like 4 or 5, and my mom used to take these like annual trips, sometimes like twice a year, to Needles, California. And we're from Oklahoma, so that is quite the drive. But it was some little hippie voyage that she and her friends would end up on just kind of randomly. And it was a place that really meant a lot to her. But one of those first trips that she took when I was that little, I remember just crying in my room and just like so sad and missing her and just kind of like, what is this? Like even at like 4 or 5 years old, I'm just like, what is, why do I have to feel all of this? And I
Yeah.
just felt this presence that was like, there will be a point to all of this, and you have a mighty purpose on your life, and you will share all of these things that hurt you so much to help this world. And as I've gotten older and older, and then I had another experience very similar when I was like 14 years old, and at that time it was like this thing that said like, your parents are going to die and that's going to be a part of your story. And this was a year before my dad died of a drug overdose.
Wow.
So it was, I used to hesitate to talk about that because I realize I sound crazy, but like that is the truth. That's my truth. Those are
Yeah.
downloads that I received twice in my childhood. And I just knew. I just knew. And I think as I was developing an identity, I I really wanted to be a victor in this life and to fulfill whatever this purpose had to be. It didn't ever make sense to me that a person would suffer the way I did for no reason. It
Mm-hmm.
always made more sense to me that there would be a purpose in my pain. So I always knew I was going to be in the helping field. And I didn't know quite what path that would end up taking, but I just always knew. I felt really lucky even in high school. You're graduating and the people around me just were so kind of like lost and grasping at like what is my path forward here. And I
Right.
see that a lot with 18-year-olds. Like when my oldest child was 18, he just kind of just started feeling a path forward and he's 23 now. So I felt really lucky in that. But my mom died when I was almost 22 and pregnant with my oldest child, and that just kinda, like, solidified it. Like, I just knew I wanted to help people. I've never really worked in the addiction space,
Mm-hmm.
um, but I have certainly been surrounded by it in one form or another my whole life. And I always say, like, I've never been addicted to, like, substances like drugs or alcohol. I've certainly, abused them in the past, but I kind of say like I'm an addict of life. Like I'll just find something and like I understand how the addict brain works because
Sure.
I don't think that most people's brains actually work that differently, but I understand what dopamine seeking is like. So I feel like I'm just taking all of that experience and I didn't think that my childhood had any impact on me until I was, like, in my mid-40s, and reached, like, profound darkness where I was in a real mental health crisis, and kind of what I've done to overcome that stuff, and even more felt that, like, drive to share what I was going through in real time. Like, I used to feel like, "Oh, you get past to a certain place and then you talk about how you did it." And then just more like intuitively over the last year and a half, it's been more like, no, 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 no. In real time, we're going to show people what it's like to show up imperfectly and be 100% fine with it.
Yeah. I Showing up imperfectly and really being able to share what you're going through has a huge impact. And I think what you're saying about it, a lot of people don't realize how impactful it can really be to admit openly and say like I am going through some shit and I am not okay right now and I am struggling and
Mhm.
here's what I'm struggling with and here's what I'm doing about it. Like just to see that human side of people, especially if you're already sharing some things
Yeah.
about your life. It's so powerful. It really is so powerful. But also, like, as someone who has shared that kind of shit before, it's hard to do. It's hard to be that vulnerable. It's scary to do that. Do
It
you
is.
have, yeah,
It is.
do you have any, like, do you find yourself holding back sometimes to just be like, this is too personal for what I'm going through?
No, but I find myself wanting to every single time.
Yeah.
There's always that what used to register as like embarrassment, like I'd be like, "Ooh, I'm embarrassed to say this." I just now understand is like, "No, you're afraid to be vulnerable." That's
Yeah.
been like such a huge key in everything. Like I knew even before the pinnacle of my mental health crisis because I tell this story a lot, but it was very impactful for me, but I'm a person who's kind of perpetually addicted to the internet. And so like I'll take a quiz. You put a quiz in front of me, I'm gonna take it. And so this one was like, are you emotionally unavailable? And I was like, not me. Like I connect with folks. And I mean, this was before I have a private practice or whatever, but I've been the helper and the healer of my circle my whole life. So that I could avoid my own stuff. But
Right.
so I took the quiz and it said I was emotionally unavailable. And I said, what? And I texted another, clinical friend of mine and I said, "Do you think I'm emotionally unavailable?" And she said, I do." I'm instantly pissed because I'm like, "What?" And I said, "Would you mind?" I was learning like just like how to like try to manage triggers. So I'm like, okay, get curious, I guess. And so I said, would you mind giving me an example? Because this is new information to me. And so I would just love to know. I am so angry at this point, though, and defensive. And
Yeah.
she's like, well, for starters, the way you retell your trauma, she could not have said anything worse to me because I valued my comedy and like
Hmm.
comedic timing and the way I made huge joke out of everything I had ever experienced. Like those were the only way I really could connect with those stories was in such a disconnected way.
Yeah.
And I was so confused, like literally baffled by this because I was like, okay, it's not that I don't believe you because like I trust and value this person's opinion.
Hmm.
But I'm like, but this is what the comedians do. So I don't understand how this is wrong. I had literally no idea what it meant to be vulnerable, nor did I understand how terrified I was of it.
Yeah.
So as I kind of went through like my little minty bee, it was pretty dark and it was pretty gross and had no idea even where to begin except for that. I knew I could try to be more vulnerable, try to share, and it took a while. But
Hmm.
then I started my first podcast and it's called Emotionally Unavailable for that reason. Um and it just, like, got easier and easier. Like, I never ever I made a commitment of authenticity for that show, but it's funny how different the show has been, like, in
Hmm.
the evolution that it's taken as I have evolved. Like, it truly is this beautiful documentation of my journey because when I started it, I knew nothing. I just was trying to be more vulnerable and trying to show other people what that looked like and kind of get an understanding of what they thought it meant to be vulnerable too. And it was wild how different everybody felt about the topic. But as I got more comfortable, I mean, it's still hard. I'm a year and a half into the show and going through wild events right now and just sharing it very publicly. And it's never not uncomfortable. I
Sure.
always feel that, but I understand it so well now. I'm intimate with what the sensation feels like and what my brain is trying to do in those moments that I feel that discomfort, and I do it anyway.
Yeah. You've mentioned that you have a podcast. You're also a therapist, so you're doing a lot of really deep work with other people in multiple ways. How do you now take care of your own mental health while you're doing that?
Um, Probably the best way to answer that would say I only do things that light me up.
Mm.
Like, if I'm working it doesn't really happen, but if I'm working with someone that doesn't light me up, first of all, the universe kinda takes care of it for me.
Yeah.
Like, it just but that's, like, my center of all the work that I do is it's reciprocal. Like, it's synergetic. Like, all of the work that I do makes me just as happy and helps me just as much as anybody else. I only do things that feel good and light me up from the inside out. So I think that's the most important piece for me. But then, just the normal what any therapist would say, boundaries and whatever. But I don't even have like all the typical boundaries because I love to connect with people. So
Hmm.
like my clients are allowed to text me little mini crises all week long and I don't care. Like if they know that if I didn't have the capacity to respond, I won't and it's not
Yeah.
personal. And that doesn't happen a lot, but it does. Like if you text me on the weekend and I'm out with my family, I'm not going to text you back right away. But yeah, so I think really honestly just doing something that like I love so much because I feel so aligned when I'm having those conversations. They're just getting it, and you just get to watch someone's consciousness expand in real time. I mean, that's my life force. So as long as I'm kind of staying aligned within that, I don't really have to do a whole lot to take care of myself, other than what any of us would need to do to take care of ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. You've got a lot of protection just in that part of saying if it doesn't light me up, I'm not doing it. If it doesn't light me up, I'm not working with that person. That's a
Hmm.
huge amount of protection. And I know from personal experience, sometimes it's hard to say no to things that don't light you up.
Sometimes it is.
Yeah.
And it's a struggle. I mean, I'm not gonna like act like I'm like, because I need money just as much as the next
Yes.
person, you know?
Yep.
So I definitely have and do. But again, I feel like the universe has a way of just coming in and taking care of that stuff for me. And with the people that I've worked with that maybe didn't light me up, I probably just do have firmer boundaries around
Mhm.
like your stuff is not something that I want you to text me about. Like, you know, and they wouldn't know the difference because I
Yeah.
just wouldn't tell them, you know. But like, I don't know, the people that I've worked with like have been like it's either short term because they got what they needed and left, or they're just like so in love with the process of just wanting to continue to expand that they're my little OG babies that like aren't going anywhere as long as like I'm like, you got me for life. Like if you really want to keep doing it, I'm here. I love talking to you. And then there's just some that are just like not committed to the process, which is why it's not lighting me up, and then they're not showing up anyway. So
Yeah. Yep. That's fair. Do you have a true crime story that fascinates you?
true crime story. Um and I don't know why. But I was so I wanna be really honest. The reason I'm hesitating to answer is because over the last, like, year specifically, I've gotten so careful about not consuming true crime because I don't know if you're familiar with Bailey Sarian, but, you know, she was my homegirl where I would watch her YouTube every day with the murder and mystery and makeup, so
Mm.
really anything she had to say, I was all about. I watched so much true crime that I was like, "I really need to be careful about what I'm programming my subconscious with."
Yeah.
But I was really obsessed with 2 in particular, well, 3 really. Casey Anthony,
Yes.
Lacey Peterson, and Shanann Watts. Like those any information. In fact, I have found myself sucked into new Shanann Watts stuff that I'm seeing on TikTok. I'm like, turn away, Melissa. You don't need this, but I can't. I'm like, why did you do this, Chris Watts? But yeah, so I don't know. I have always had what I find to be kind of a weird obsession with true crime in general, but probably because I was raised by my grandma who's over here, you know, we're watching Lifetime, we're watching Unsolved Mysteries, like all that stuff. So there's not a true crime that like I haven't been pulled to at some point. I was also pretty obsessed with the Gabby Petito stuff.
Mm. Oh, yeah.
So yes, and I watched the documentary and I was just like, no. So
Yep.
those are my top ones. But I mean, I've pretty much seen them all. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I mean it's one of those things. So I also there have been some times where I'll be watching a documentary. My 18-year-old is very into um wait, is he 19 now? Did he just turn 19? Shit. My 19-year-old and I are both into true crime, but he gets really into he'll just put on a documentary for background noise and I'll walk through and I'll be like,
Uh-huh.
hold on, what did they just say? And then we have to sit down and
Yeah.
watch the whole thing together. But it's very like some of the things that he can just sit there and put on in his background noise. I'm like, I need a minute. I need a break.
I used to fall
But
asleep to it every night.
yes, 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 yeah, yep. And I love like my favorite murder is probably my top true crime podcast. Like it's just wonderful to hear people talk about these things that happen and then talk about the why behind it. I think that's what gets me is
Yes.
like I want to know the why behind the monster so I can
Yes.
figure out what's going on. And then
Oh, well, I mean, it
also,
gives us that layer. That's exactly what drew me to
yeah.
it. Is I was like, if I can figure out who the bad guy is, I will
Yes.
never be the victim. I really
Exactly.
think that anyone with a
Exactly.
history of trauma is so drawn to it because it makes us feel like, I mean, it's what our hypervigilant brains latch onto. Like, oh,
Yes.
you might be a serial killer because I know about serial killers. Yeah,
Yep, very
absolutely.
much.
But
Very
like,
much.
I mean, 3 years old, I'm like, yeah, bad guy.
Yeah, yeah. Now, you've been through so much foster care, addiction, incarceration. Can you take us back to a moment where you realized that you really had that choice between staying in all of that pain and beginning to transform it?
Yeah, I don't know that I could pinpoint an age, but my
Hmm.
siblings in our early adolescence really started to make different choices than me. I mean, to be fair, I was the golden child of our system. And so I found very early on that if you're quiet and you do what you're told, you can become somewhat worthy of love and belonging, right? So, like, I was the people pleaser of my system. And it was an easier route. I mean, it wasn't easy, but it was a path of least resistance, I'll say,
Right.
because we all know people pleasing gets you nowhere good. But my older brother started running away from home, abusing drugs like in middle school, and it was very scary and very painful, and I just knew that wasn't a path I wanted to take. And then my
Mm-hmm.
younger brother started that stuff after our dad died. And again, it was like, A, I'm seeing the pain that you're causing our grandma, who in my eyes was our savior. And so, like, between her five children and us three, I was kind of the golden child of all of
Yeah.
us. And so I kind of took pride in that role. But I just saw like I was never that person who had to learn the hard way. I feel really grateful for that because my brothers really were. And but I would just watch them like make a mistake and then be like, "Ooh, that does not seem like something I want to deal with." And so having this lived experience of watching every member of my family kind of do something that just was tragic to their life path, I knew I didn't want that lifestyle. I also was one of those kids who daydreamed of becoming a mom, and I knew I didn't wanna be what I was receiving. So I
Yeah.
think that helped too, but also I was really grounded in that idea of purpose. Like I was like, I'm not gonna be able to accomplish changing this world if I'm living this lifestyle. Now, I mean, that is not to say that there haven't been periods of my life where I was just trashing myself, like I have been through a divorce and the divorce crazies are real. So, did lots and lots of irresponsible things during that time and during my mental health crisis. I was not being like good to myself or anyone around me. So
Yeah.
it's not like I haven't made those choices, but I think again, I'm just really grounded in my purpose. And so I think that really helped. But I also think it was just a culmination of all those things too.
Yeah. And you've spoken on the topic of turning pain into light. And what does that actually look like in practice? Can you walk us through what that process was for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think at first it was, especially as I was still like learning to become vulnerable or just not vulnerable at all. Um, I think it just looked like going, "Hey, I experienced like some of the worst stuff you can experience in childhood, and yet I was the first member of my family to graduate from college." I mean, not on my dad's side. I had some cousins that did, but like I just don't think about them because that's not like who I was like raised with.
Right.
But like in my little family, I was the first out of all those five, you know, aunt, uncle, all them, and my mom, and then all like my grandma, I think had 19 grandchildren and then like a plethora of
Wow.
great grandchildren because
Yeah.
she started young.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it started with that, just kind of sharing like I survived, which felt really good for people to like be like, "Wow, how did you get through that?" And I was smug because I didn't know that that childhood had really any impact on me. Swear to God, 18, I'm like, "I don't know, I just don't think it really had that big of an effect on me because I wasn't living my pain out loud the way my brothers
Right.
had been for so many years. I was the good girl. So I'm over here just doing what needs to be done. I like to say I was making all the right decisions for all the wrong reasons. So I'm
Mm.
operating from this place really of spite because I grew up in a kinship foster care placement. And so I was a part of this private foster care agency, Casey Family Program. Love them. But I received a lot of really good education about kind of the statistics with foster kids and what could and would be likely to happen if I wasn't like safeguarding my life a little bit. But hearing those statistics, I was just kind of like a "I'll prove everyone wrong" kind of gal, because
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up in this really toxic system. So like I had aunts who were like actively talking about me, like gossiping and whatever, and cousins. Like it was such just it's very normal for this type of system. I mean, feel like until we learn how to connect authentically, that's what we all do, is just like connect via gossip or complaining.
Mm.
And so I experienced that from close family members. And so I just like operated from this place of I'm going to prove everybody wrong. Everybody, any statistic wrong, any family member wrong. I think I probably ultimately was trying to prove myself wrong. That somewhere deep inside of me, I didn't believe I was enough, and so I was like, no, we're enough. So yeah, it started that way, and then as I've become more vulnerable and just like had a spiritual awakening and really been on this journey of expanded consciousness, the more I learn, the more I want to share that with others, because for one thing, I don't believe that you can have light without darkness. So I
Mm.
went through this really profound darkness, and now I have the contrast to compare it. And I go, oh, I wouldn't even recognize light if I hadn't lived dark. So I love that. And I love getting to share that with others. But also, I think the biggest part of it is that I continue to get a deeper understanding of this, but that there's not a destination. Like I was pulled to talking about real-time transformation or evolution or growth, because I had to realize like we're not going to land at a place on the map that says healed.
Yeah.
This, like, the whole idea is to understand you're not broken. You're just a part of this system, ecosystem, world that has taught you so many things about yourself that aren't true. And so when you can scrape away all the BS that you've ever been programmed to believe about yourself and come home to yourself and just go, oh, because I had this moment, I had just started kind of like really getting into astrology. And I was following a girl on TikTok that I really like, and she does like new moon and full moon workbooks. And so one of the new moon things had you doing like an identity audit, and I was like, oh, this is cute. Okay. So I was like, okay, here's all the qualities of like my dream self, like who I just, and I did notice like I'm trying really hard to be this perpetually unbothered person, and that was like my deepest sense of shame was around how reactive I was
Mm.
to everything in my environment. And it's because I internalized every single thing. Like conflict in the real world, I was going to freeze or fawn. And then I came home and took every ounce of it on my family. Like that, I just,
Wow.
like, they got every ounce of all the things I held in for the day. And I was so ashamed of that. And it really not even just my family, anybody close to me. My friends really didn't get it as bad as like my family did, but they got it. They got it. And it was just my deepest source of shame. And so I'm recognizing like, okay, I'm trying to be this really Zen Buddha monkey type gal, and yet I've really just started learning how to hold this fire in me and to not like feel so burned by it, and to advocate just as strongly as I ever had for anyone else, but for myself, and to really stand in my own authority. And so I was like, I don't want to extinguish that, but why am I working so hard to be this? I really like my fire. And it just occurred to me like, I'm just hating this reactivity in myself. So if I
Yeah.
remove that and I look at all these other characteristics of this little made up person I'm trying to become, I'm already those things. I'm those things and reactive. That's what I am. And I can work on reactivity. I don't need to change every last thing about myself to get rid of reactivity. I'll tell you, I still had no idea how to. I mean, I still was not like very far along in the process or whatever, but I knew like instinctively, I was just like, whoa, 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 whoa. And it was just that day, like it was a day in April that year. Like I'll never forget. I was driving down the road when I was like, wait a second, I already am all that. Like I'm great exactly how I am. I don't like that I'm reactive. And I can work on that. But I don't need to shed every last thing about myself. I need to shed all the things I've been believing about those things about myself. And that was really the beginning. And I started to realize, wait, I need to be sharing that. Like, I'm not perfect. And I wasn't pretending to be either. But I had still been on a little bit of a high horse. I mean, but I just recognized the strength in that authenticity and vulnerability and the ability to be like, yo, I actually have no idea what I'm doing, but I did just discover I'm probably not the worst person on this earth. And in fact, I've got to figure out how to believe quite the opposite. And so it's really just been this evolution of like learning to accept all of that stuff about me and just sharing how that lights me up and handing that off to others.
You mentioned a couple of things. So you mentioned that there's no, it's not the destination. Like there's no, oh, you've arrived at healed, right? Like you're not going to get, there's not a
Mhm.
big sign whenever you get there. And
Yeah.
also, healing is just kind of one of those things that it's constant. And then you've had some of these bigger revelations. Is there something that you're still learning about yourself in this healing journey that maybe surprises you every now and then?
Yes, all the time. And like I said, I get deeper understandings of stuff all the time. But I let you be aware that I just lost my son a few weeks ago to an accidental overdose. Actually, I guess it's been about a month now. But grief has really shown me some things that I already knew, but like I'm really understanding now. So one of the really big things that I had to learn was how afraid I was to trust. And at first I thought it was how afraid I was to trust other people. And then I learned, baby, you're afraid to trust yourself. And then I had to really dig in and anchor into the fact that I am enough to face anything that comes towards me and any adversity that I go through in this lifetime. I'm enough, and I'm enough to get through it and to have a really beautiful life. And I had to understand that I no longer needed to protect myself from me or these people that I have deemed like good for me. Like they're in my circle for a reason. So even though I am very vulnerable or have really strived to be, asking for help is still a struggle. And sharing in real time, like with a friend, like, hey, I'm struggling right now, still a little bit of a struggle. So what I learned though, what I've been so grateful to this lesson that's been so like just it just broke me open in the most beautiful way. I was sitting at the funeral home during visitation day and a friend showed up that I wasn't expecting to be there, and it felt really good to see her. And but I'll be honest, she was a friend that I, in previous versions of my life, I wouldn't have shared anything with, because I used to tell myself, and I'm embarrassed to say this, like legitimately embarrassed, but I used to tell myself I couldn't share with people because they were dumb. Like, what do they know that I don't know? Like, how are they going to help me in a way that I couldn't help myself?
Mm,
Like, I wouldn't even go to therapy because I was like, what do they know that I don't know? You know? And I didn't understand that even though I knew all of the things that I had been internalizing my whole life and minimalizing and trivializing, I knew those things. I knew those things, but I didn't realize how I was continuing to perpetuate that cycle. And since my son died, I'm shared. You let me talk about it. I'm talking about it. Like I'm talking because I just recognize you have to get it out. Like
yeah.
like that's the only way that you can't like let your brain go crazy with stuff is just talk, 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 talk. So that's like all I do is talk. And I'm sitting there and I'm sharing with her, and it occurs to me in that moment, like I don't know if you've had those ahas that just change who you are to a cellular level, like you can never go back to who you were before. But I'm sitting there and I was like, this that was the lie that my brain was telling me to protect me, that I couldn't tell people my stuff because they were stupid and they weren't going to be able to help me, so that I didn't have to be vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have to share and show people I'm weak, because that's what it felt like, that I couldn't show up in that way or people would hurt me. And they also wouldn't view me as an authority, which was really important to me, to be the smartest one in the room at all times. And so it was such just an abundant feeling, and it just broke me open in the best way, because I was like, oh, I can share. And I had been in the days leading up to that,
Yeah.
but it shifted everything even then, because it was like, yes, keep sharing. That was just your brain. And I knew that in logic. Like, I have learned enough to know that is a thing that was present in my life. but it's been a slow growing process where I was on somebody else's show when they described to me some protective layers that I had starting from when my dad died. I hadn't seen it, that behavior
Yeah.
as that. I had not. And I mean, I was really far along in this process. And, but again, I'm just like such a student of this life. I was so open to that and it just shifted. And then I was like, okay, then I know I'm doing this in other ways, but I hadn't been able to pinpoint it yet. And just in that moment, just seeing like, okay, I'm constantly preaching to people that your brain is a freaking liar that will do anything to keep you safe. Like all of the lies, it will make you feel like the most giant, horrible person just to get you to stay small and to shut up because that's the only thing it knows to do to keep you alive. And so that has been huge for me, just realizing it is okay to just talk with zero expectation for their response. Whereas before, the lie that was being fed was they're not saying the right thing because they don't care about me. They don't love me
Mm-hmm.
the way I love them. They're not interested in showing up for me the way I need them to. And I just did not realize there wasn't a single thing that anybody could have done that I was going to approve of because I just was agitated at the sharing. I was being seen and I was uncomfortable with that and I didn't know what to do with it. So I just got mad and pushed everyone away. That's what I did my whole life. And so I knew through my other losses, because I lost my grandma 10 years ago too. Well, almost 11 now, but I knew I didn't handle any of those well. And that really went through some toxic cycles through those. And I just knew with all the work that I've done, I didn't want to throw all of that away. And I'm also so like in love with the idea of my purpose and what I'm doing on this planet. And I didn't want to like just destroy my life because the worst that you can possibly imagine happens. And it sounds weird, I think, to some people, or at least I worry that it does because I'm still human. And so, like, it's still weird for me to even share such intimate details with people. But I know I was taught really like toxic things about what grief should look like anyway because my grandma was just like, oh, that's morbid, or you don't do this, or called people weird. So I know that that's where some of my like hesitance to like not feel weird comes from.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's been the surprising thing is like, baby, you were still lying to yourself and you don't have to do that anymore.
Why, first of all, I am incredibly sorry for your loss. I appreciate you sharing that with us, and I cannot imagine what you are going through right now, a month ago, in the future, any of that. Oh, I mean, grief is one of those things that we've had entire episodes just on grief and loss, and it's
Hmm.
such a huge topic of it doesn't look the same for everyone. Like one person can describe what they're going through, another person can have an almost identical situation, and they can experience it in two completely different ways. But
Hmm.
just the realization that, hey, even if someone else isn't smarter than me, even if someone else doesn't have the degrees that I have, first of all, that doesn't mean that you can't talk to them and share with them, because then you're creating that transactional. It's like it's just a transactional, what am I going to get out of this
Yes.
situation?
Hmm.
But then also, like, you don't have to learn from anybody. You could just share it because it helps you. And it sounds like that's really what you've kind of gotten to, is sharing is what really helps you get things out there. But that shit is still hard to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, it's weird because people tend to only text me in these moments where I'm having a good time, where things are like I can do this so easily because this is spiritual for me. Like I can talk about things that light me up all day. So if someone were to text me as soon as we're done, I'm good.
Yeah,
Like it's very rare that someone texts me in the moments where like I'm really losing it.
right.
Um, so like I'm learning to not just respond when people ask. The other night I made myself text a friend and say, I just need to vent. I'm really sorry if you're busy, but this thing just happened and I'm really upset about it. Blah, 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 blah. I mean, it was all related to my son, but it was like a first that we encountered and I was
Yeah.
just really upset about it. And I was like, is this what sharing in real time looks like? Like, because I will tell you this, I have not been able to pick up the phone and call somebody to be like, I'm crying. Like I
Yeah.
haven't been, but I have a really good little infrastructure at home. I have a 23-year-old who's grieving just as heavily as I am.
Yeah.
And so I've made a commitment to be really open with my family because I also have an 11-year-old, and so I'm really trying to model how okay it is to be fine 1 minute, crying the next, and then back to baseline. Like I'm really trying to model that. And so I'm making myself be very cryy in front of her if that's what
Yeah.
I'm nothing inauthentic. I'm just showing up however I feel like I need to show up so that I can show her all the faces of this pain. And so I do have a really good infrastructure here. So I don't necessarily have to call people because my son is spending a lot of time at home and stuff. But there are times I kind of want to and I don't. So like I'm still learning and growing in that area, but I was proud of myself for texting. I said, "Okay, we texted somebody."
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean that it sounds like you did what you needed to do in the moment. And even if you can't call someone at that moment, even if all you can do is just text them, like that's still reaching out for help and it still alerts your circle that you need a little extra support. And
Yeah.
maybe they aren't able to give you
Yes.
that support in that moment, but at least then you're on their mind and it gets you that support out in the universe a little bit more.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I like that you framed it that way. Well, because I can really get caught in the should-haves. And so
Sure.
I'm learning that baby steps are just as important and
Yes.
that I should never force myself to do something that I'm that uncomfortable with. So like it's okay that I did something to my comfort level. I did the thing I needed to do to my comfort level and that is just fine. It's enough.
100%. You work with complex PTSD, both personally, you've been through complex PTSD, and also you work with folks who are experiencing it themselves professionally. What's something about trauma recovery that most people misunderstand?
Oh gosh. I feel like a really big part of trauma recovery that people don't understand is that trauma is trauma because of the way it impacts you,
Mm,
not because of how big or small an event was, but the programming that you received through that event. And I feel like all of us, whether we have this big T, little t label of trauma, have experienced enough, especially because I don't believe anyone in the West, I'll say, received near enough emotional support during those pivotal emotional developmental milestones.
mm,
So that's what I think is most misunderstood is it's not whether or not you were physically or sexually abused. It's not whether or not your parents were addicts or in and out of prison. It's not your brother being institutionalized. It's whatever created this thing inside of you that says, I'm too much and not enough. And might, at my core, just be fundamentally unlovable. I haven't met a person yet that doesn't have those narratives. And I've
mm,
met people who had very different childhoods than me, who had what you would describe as the dream of a childhood. And so, whatever those micro traumas, whatever it was that stacked to create those narratives, they happened. And those narratives were internalized by those people just as much as they were me. I I think I found the idea of oneness when I started to be able to see I'm not any different than anyone else in my life or out there on this planet. And they're not any different than I am. And I started, the more aware of myself and the more intimate I became with myself, the more somebody can just talk and I can hear their shame and I can
mm.
hear what they're lying to themselves about. Like it's second nature now because I'm that aware of myself. Obviously, I still have blind spots. I just learned I was still scared to talk to people. Come on.
Yeah.
But like, um, I just think once I really uncovered what those narratives were, we're all experiencing them. And so it really, that's what it boiled down to me, is that trauma and trauma recovery is not about unearthing every bad thing that's ever happened to you. It's unearthing all the lies that you came to believe about yourself. And when you can get rid of those, everything changes. I mean, everything changes.
Yeah. You've written workbooks also that have titles like Safe to Be Seen and The Beauty of Imperfection. Why do you think visibility and perfectionism are such big blocks for trauma survivors?
Well, perfectionism really is born from that same little liar place in your brain that feeds you catastrophe. And
Mm,
so um perfectionism is this nice little safety net where we don't even have to try, like we don't have to begin if we can't be perfect at it. And so as I found all the sneaky ways perfectionism was popping up in my life, because it's not just like, oh, I'm OCD, I have to have the ribbon in the right place and da da da. It is literally like, I had a conversation with someone, I shared my feelings, I should feel really proud of it, but I'm not because I didn't do it in the right way. Or, there're just these really sneaky ways. And it all just ties back to that not enough narrative. I mean, every bit of it ties back to the not enough. And the not enough is tied to that place in your brain that's like, here's catastrophe. You shouldn't try anything new because you might die. And so, all those times that you want to step outside of yourself and you feel so dysregulated and so unsafe, that's all from the same place: perfectionism, not enough. And so, I think when we can lie to ourselves in that perfectionism bubble, then it's easy for us to stay small and continue to confirm all that negativity bias and then never actually have to share with anyone. None of us were taught to share, to be vulnerable. Like, I thought I was sharing all those times that I was. I don't even know what I did, honestly. I mean, I would trauma dump and trauma bond, like, oh, you was beaten too, your parents, yeah, oh yeah, me too, but I wore so many masks. My mask had a mask because at the core is that perfectionism, because you say to yourself, A, you wouldn't say those nice things about me if you knew the real me. And conversely, you can reject this mask and that could never hurt me that much. But if I gave you the real me and you rejected that, I would not survive it
hmm
because I'm not enough. So it's all just this continual little cycle of lies and shame and fear that you're feeding yourself. And you can't have one without the other. And so once you just to start unravel all of that, again, everything changes because you can see the truth. Healing from trauma isn't about anything other than coming home to yourself, connecting back to your body, and being willing to say, I was never supposed to be perfect. So I guess I'm doing a great job of being a human because I'm really imperfect. And I am. I say it all time. Like, I'm still so nasty to my husband sometimes. He is still the person I'm going to take everything out on when I'm having a bad day. I don't like it. I don't like the way I feel when I do that. So I continually work on that. It's a work in progress. I'm sure he hates it. Like, he doesn't take it personally anymore because he understands where it's coming from. But it is what it is, and it's not because I don't think he deserves better. I do, but, like, I'm trying, and that's all I can do, and I can't be responsible for whether or not he decides to stay in a marriage with somebody who takes their stuff out on him,
hmm
Like, that's on him. I'm just doing my very, very best, and so I just try to be really open about the fact that, like, I'm not pretty aware of how imperfect I am, but I'm so okay with that because I'm not buying into any of the lies that society has taught us, that my parents taught me, my grandma, none of that. I'm just scraping away all the things that people told me to believe about myself. And I came home to who I really am. And I don't have to wear a mask. I can be seen because even if I'm rejected, I know that doesn't have anything to do with me.
Yeah.
People don't act from somebody else's place. They act from their internal world. I'm so aware of that now. I'm a human. It hurts my feelings sometimes, but it doesn't
Sure.
destroy me. It doesn't destroy me at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, of course, it's gonna hurt your feelings a little bit. That's like you said, that's part of being human. The recognition, though, that it's not all about you is sometimes I still struggle with that even quite a bit, and I'm
Mhm.
like, okay, chill. It's not. They're not even thinking about you. Like that, you're not even on their mind. It's not. You're not even crossing their
Yes.
mind right now. It's all
Mhm.
about them. I have had to do that quite a bit and just like check myself and go, okay, hold on. You're putting so much onto this other person when they're not even like you're not part of the thought process right there. Are they part of my thought
Which can
process
also
right
hurt
now?
your feelings,
No.
let's
Yeah,
be honest.
yeah, it can. It definitely
Because like it's
can.
like why am I not
You're not
prioritized?
being
You can't
considered.
even think
Yes.
about me? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a
Yeah.
whole little thing that I can get really like victimy about really quick. So like
Yes.
the last resort for me is like if I was this person and this is how I was behaving, why would I be doing that? Because they're not any different than me.
Yeah.
So, like, I'll get into the energy of that person and be like, okay, and also I can see where I do that too. So, and I'm so
Yes.
like comfortable with being like, forgive yourself and moving on that whatever I can extend to myself, I can now extend to others. Whereas
Yeah.
before, I couldn't even extend myself kindness, love, or compassion. So, nobody else got that from me either. They got a lot of judgment and criticism.
Yeah. Now, how do you define self compassion, especially for someone who's been through significant trauma? And what does it actually mean to be compassionate with yourself?
How do I define it? Um, Unconditional positive regard
Hmm.
is really what I would say. Where if like I just allow myself to be human. I mean, truly, it started as one decision. It was like an invocation or a decree, right? Like I am going to love myself, and then the first opportunity that came up where maybe I'm about to pick myself apart in the mirror, and I do, and then I go, you know what? Actually, we don't talk about ourselves like that. The first time I go to make a self deprecating joke about myself, which I used to love to do, I stop to whoever I'm saying that to and I say, actually, I shouldn't talk about myself like that. I shouldn't have said that. And so I'm going to say this out loud to reverse that because I'm reprogramming my subconscious. Listen, it gets weird. People don't want to know all this about me, but they're going to. And so that's literally how it's worked for me is one decision and then confirming that decision all day, every day to where now it truly is like I have built those neural pathways. It is so second nature. I will know that I am holding myself to some cross of perfection based off the feeling of dysregulation. Like I was
Hmm.
having a whole thing the other day that I just put out a solo episode today about this, but I was having a whole thing where I was like just I recognized that I was feeling unsafe in my body and that I hadn't really done some body connection in a couple days. And so I just do a lot of hey, I've noticed Melissa, like what version of you is scared right now? What's needing comforted? Like why are you catastrophizing? Why are you blaming yourself for something? Why are you at fault here? What's going on? What do you need right now? And it was so comforting. Like I think this may have just even been yesterday. I was just comforting myself and it really was so comforting and I felt like a mom had her arms just wrapped around me because I was like, "Hey, what you don't have to be perfect. So what is happening here? Like let's remind ourselves of what's true." And I went through you get to meet all kinds of cool people on a podcast. So like when people offer me free stuff, I accept it. That's been something I've been committed to. I've been like, yes, I'll take your free chakra clearing, whatever. Like I do it all. And I was doing something, I don't remember what she called it, but she had me go back to the 15-year-old version of me who like had started pushing everyone away because my dad died and I needed to confirm this narrative that nobody loved me. And that nobody wanted to be there for me, even though I'm realizing like, pretty sure I didn't let them be there for me. That's sad. and talk to that version of me and tell her all the truths that I've learned since that time. And it was such a freedom and it was so empowering. And then she had me talk to my 65-year-old self. And she said, "What does your 65-year-old self tell you?" And that's when I realized, I was like, she says, "I'm not afraid to trust other people. I'm afraid to trust myself." And so as I've really leaned into the idea that, like, you are trustworthy, it all ties back to that invocation, that decree, where I understood that moment, even that April, where I said, "Fine, exactly how I am. I got to unbecome a couple of things. Like, I got to work on that reactivity, and I'm going to, and I'm going to be working on it the rest of my life. I guarantee it." But, like, I'm great. I know what my intentions are. And it was the first time in my life where I truly felt full of worth and full of value and true love. And I started to think, like, this is the only love that actually exists, is this love that you cultivate within and then you share that with others. But this is why I have believed my whole life that I loved everyone more and differently than they loved me. And that was a huge source of contention in my marriage. And I
Mm.
was like, yo, I, I get it. Like, you do love me. Like, I'm able to receive that now because I know this feeling and I'm worthy of love and I deserve love. And I never deserved all the things I was lying to myself about before. So for me, it really started there. And then it was just like deeper and deeper understandings. But I think I've been talking about this so much lately, but we as humans will bust hell wide open to make our outsides match our insides. So, as you're working so hard on developing a beautiful inner world full of love and joy and gratitude, your outsides start to match that. And so, how can you not then confirm that part over and over the same way I used to confirm that nobody loved me before?
Hmm.
So, I don't know if I answered your question, but
I mean, yeah, you definitely went into it for what that means for yourself and everything. So if someone is maybe struggling to quiet that noise of fear and self-doubt and find that self-compassion, is there a practice or a tool that they can maybe use this week whenever the noise gets loud?
well, I do want to recommend a resource.
Yeah.
So, I was told about this book called The Finding Peace Workbook. The author is Troy Love. It's on Amazon for like 25 bucks. This was the game changer. This is what shifted everything for me. This was before I learned self-love, whatever. I got to the root of my shame. So why I was in this mental health crisis was because I would have described to you like I was hearing voices, but it was all
Mm.
my voice, but they had different personalities and it was very confusing because it got very loud and these little personalities were arguing all the time like, "Melissa, you know better than that. How could you yell at your kid like that? How could you blah blah blah?" And then here comes the other personality like, "Ugh, I would have done that if they hadn't done da 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 da," because I loved to place the blame on somebody else so that I
Mm.
could shove that feeling down. And so he breaks shame down into different archetypes. And I was like, "Da, la, la." That's what I've been experiencing is these different shadows of shame in my brain. And so at first, it was hard to identify that that's what was going on. It's like, "Oh, your brain's really noisy." I had to cue in. I told myself. And so then my subconscious picked up on the fact that I told myself, if your neck, back, and shoulders hurt really bad, there's your first sign you're overthinking. And if you're overthinking, what were you thinking? And it always tied back to me having some internal dialogue, some fight with someone, some way I should have handled it differently, what I would do if I ran into them right now. I mean, it was all the time. My brain was very loud, very noisy, and very rude to me and everyone else, just full of judgment and fear. And so I learned how to quiet those little shadows because that book really helped me identify them. And then the next time it came up, I'm like, "Oh, okay, I'm dealing with shame. I'm dealing with shame. So what?" And it teaches you how to walk through this process. But I'm like, "Okay, so which shadow is it? What is that trying to protect me from?" Oh, it's always the same thing. It's protecting you from being vulnerable. I mean, you know what I mean? It's protecting you from feeling because that's what we do is we intellectualize every single thing and
Mm.
internalize and then we don't share and we don't feel. And so I had to really learn how to experience a feeling. And so, really, even before you understand the shadows of shame, and even before you understand where your wounding was created, if you find yourself really overthinking, or if you are someone who is in intense grief right now, what I do sometimes when it's just so heavy and I don't know how to identify it, or even like hold the grief in its entirety, I just start to tune in to different sensations in my body. Connecting to your body is the best way to learn how to experience feelings. Now I can just go, I'm in my heart, I'm not in my head, and just feel that weight. And usually I can just cry it out and I move on in about 90 seconds. Because if you're not feeding your emotions with all these crazy thoughts, they will process in 90 seconds. When you're dealing with grief, it's going to come right back in about 30 minutes. But like, you do it over and over. But if a really good practice is just to go, I'm connecting with my body. I like to put my hands around my navel and do really deep breaths. I do that so that I can feel the rise and fall of my hands, because then you're connecting to a sensation in your body. You're not
Hmm.
this floating balloon tethered by a string. And I'll just notice, where am I feeling different sensations? My chest is usually hurting, so I'll cue into that. There's usually like some kind of weirdness in my tummy, tension in my lower back. Just doing that gets you out of your head and will get you from like a 10 to a 6, where you can start to get rational and deal with things, and you're not, you know, like swimming through noise. You're just connecting with yourself. Connecting to yourself is the number one way out of all of the catastrophe, all of the noise, all of the shame, all of the fear. Because being in your body, that's that's what the term embodied means, for anyone who doesn't know, because I didn't for a really long time know what I was like, what does that mean? But just connecting with who you are at your core, you can do that in such a simple way, and I feel better every single time. Usually it will channel emotional expression like crying, or
Hmm.
the need for a dance party, or just wiggling my hands really fast, because maybe I'm noticing that the sensation is in my neck and shoulders. Okay, I'm feeling some anxiety, I'm feeling unsafe somewhere. Let me remind myself I'm safe, and then express it through, like, wiggling my hands. Those are the fastest way. Get out of your head into your heart. You can face anything from within who you really are. Your brain is never going to be able to logic you out of all that noise. But the Finding Peace workbook, I recommend it to everyone, because it has those archetypes of shame, and then it also helps you understand how your wounding was created.
That sounds great. I've definitely already added it to my Goodreads list for sure. So I'll have to go pick it up. But that's one of the things that my therapist was not I don't think she was frustrated with me the most over like my intellectualizing, because I am one of those people. I'm like, I've Googled everything. I understand what's going on. Great. Now what? And she's like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so where do you feel that? And I'm like, what? What? What do you mean? What does that mean? What does that mean? Where do I feel
Uh-huh,
that?
uh-huh. And you're like,
I don't feel it. It's in my brain.
here. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it. But wasn't it so confusing too? Because it's like, well, I feel mad. So, but it took a very long time for me to connect the dots there.
Yes.
Like, what do you mean this isn't feeling? It really did. That was such a struggle for me.
Yep.
And it was funny because my very first therapy client, that was her struggle too. This girl owned every self-help book. I mean, and I recognized myself in her immediately, because she was so smart and so knew everything. And I was like, okay, so here's where we're gonna start. And watching her grow so quickly, because we don't need to start from the beginning. Yeah, I'm gonna learn some things about how your wounding was created, so that we can figure out what your triggers are, but that comes slowly, organically, through conversation. But let's figure out how to get in here, out of your head, into your heart. So all my clients know, like, anytime they're like intellectualizing something, I'm like, it really sounds like in your head, not in your heart. But I have to do
Hmm.
it too sometimes, where, like, especially with grief, especially losing a child in the manner that I lost
Yeah.
him, it would be very easy as his mother to be like, this is all my fault.
Right.
And so it's not that thoughts like that haven't come up, but I know what to do with them, because whether I should have, could have, would have, whatever, made different decisions in parenting him, it doesn't change anything.
Right.
And my brain is only latching onto that to feel some sense of control.
Yeah.
So what I can do is honor the life that I have to leave, like to from this point forward, like what I want to live. And because I'm still worthy of having a beautiful life and I still deserve that. Whether I made mistakes as a parent or not, I am worthy and deserving of whatever I want in this life. And nothing external of me changes that. So you have a choice. Do I sit in all the regret and remorse? I mean, to be clear, I wasn't like that bad of a parent. I made all the normal parenting mistakes. But
Every parent makes mistakes. There's not a
right,
perfect parent.
right. And so, but like mom guilt, right? We're so bad
Yep.
about it.
Oh
And
yeah.
so I could choose to bathe in that. I could, but I don't want to. I don't deserve that. I don't deserve that. And it doesn't serve me at all. So when that starts, because of course it starts, of course the noise can get loud for anybody, no matter how evolved you've become. I just know what the truth is. And so to honor that truth, I just get out of my head and I go to my body and I say, hey, there's some stuff you haven't addressed today, apparently, because you wouldn't be up here having that if you had expressed the emotion when I needed to. Because the thing is doing stuff like this, I love it so much. But when your nervous system is still dysregulated, because I mean, this just happened a month ago, I'm
Yeah.
still like processing and whatever. Um, the fluctuations of things happens in a much quicker scale. So like homeostasis happens much quicker. What comes up is going to come down much faster than it would in a very regulated nervous system. Whereas before, if I had like, a solid 48 hours of just high, 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 I'm going to have a low point in chemicals to
Right.
reach homeostasis again. Now it's happening, it cycles through very quickly. I just have to be aware of that. So when I have a really good morning, that evening is going to suck. And I have to know that. And I'm okay with it. And I just go, oh, okay, there was some grief that needed to be addressed today that I've just been in a little too good of a mood about. And so now I'm going to look at that grief and I'm going to hold it. And it may be the entire evening. That may, I may have to do lots of different things to hold that grief, but I do it over and over and over.
Yeah. And I know, we've talked a little bit about kind of the ability to rebuild and the ability to process and everything. And a lot of folks will coin that to the term resilience a little bit. And whenever people hear that word resilience, it's like, it's kind of a pressure to bounce back quickly.
Hmm.
That's not necessarily what resilience is to me. It is part of it, I think. But
Right.
how do you think about resilience differently?
You know, it used to be one of those false pride masky type words for me. When
Mhm.
people would call me that, it'd trigger that if you knew me, you wouldn't say that. But I thought it meant letting things roll off your back, that you're just so strong. And then I grew to resent the word strong and
Yep.
resilient. I hated it because I was like, it just felt like in my mental health crisis that people were just like, instead of throwing me a life raft, watching me drown and be like, you're doing great, sweetie. And so it was like, no, like there was a very active choice somewhere in healing where I said, I don't want to be strong. I actually want to be soft. I want to be
Mhm.
cared for. I want to be nurtured. I just want someone to hold me. Um, and then as I realized, like, you should want those things. It's normal to want those things. That doesn't make you weak to need or crave those things. I realized the way that resilience has transformed for me is the ability to be okay showing up authentically, whoever you are, and to endure whatever it is that you endure and still find love and joy and beauty and meaning in a world where it would be so easy to feel like none of those things exist. So to experience, I think anybody living in today's climate is resilient because it is very difficult to see the events of the world and feel like there's a point to any of this. But if you can ground into what you feel is your truth for this lifetime, mine is purpose and and whatever, but I truly feel like the human experience is to find that love, that unconditional positive regard for yourself, and that abundance of joy. And I think gratitude is wrapped in that, not gratitude necessarily for the bad things, even though I think that is a part of healing, is getting to a place where you go, man, I can be grateful for that dark because it gave me the light. But even if you don't, like, that's okay too. But like, I just had a whole conversation about this today, about how grateful I've been to myself this past month for putting the work in this last year and a half. Because if I hadn't, this would have already destroyed me. And
Yeah.
I would have been the root of destroying what's left of my family. So I think resilience really is anchoring into what your meaning is, regardless, because you know that no matter what happens, nothing external of you changes your worth and value as a human.
Yeah, looking at resilience as an anchor, I think, is a really interesting way to me to look at it, to view it, because I was the same. I got really resentful whenever people would say like, "Oh, you're so resilient," and I'm like, "I don't want
Hmm.
to be. I'm tired of it. I don't want to be anymore."
Yeah,
And
I don't want to be God's strongest
yeah,
soldier or whatever it is
right.
they say. Mm-mm, I can't handle it anymore.
I'm sick of it. Quit throwing me things where I have to be strong.
Uh huh.
Quit.
Uh huh.
Just
I was
quit.
like, yeah, okay. So what happens if I don't want to be though?
Yeah,
So
right.
what's that like? Because I
Yes.
actually had a friend one time say like, oh, I haven't experienced that kind of loss like from my parents, because God knows I couldn't handle that. And so, and I was like, oh,
I don't want to handle it.
yeah. I was like, oh, okay.
Quit
Well,
making me.
neither can I. So what do we do about it then?
Yeah,
What are we supposed
yeah.
to do? How do you give up? Because like I'm
Mhm.
really thinking that's starting to sound good.
Yeah, yes. You mentioned humor at the very beginning of this and that you kind of turned you used to like really lean on dark humor. Do you still bring humor into your work and how do you find that that fits into healing from trauma?
Yeah, I mean, I'm funny, so yeah, I still use that. I just don't make jokes that are to my detriment or anyone else's.
Yeah.
But I mean, dark humor I think is fine. I think there's a place for it. But yeah, I just think as long as nobody else is the butt of my joke and I'm not the butt of my joke, then it's fine. I mean, there is a time and a place for all things. And so, yeah, I still use humor a lot. And I think it helps people to relate to me and to connect with me. And I think it's just a part of humanity too, to just find fun in anything you're doing. And so, yeah, I think fun itself is really important to me, and I think being funny and humor is a part of that.
Yeah. It can be hard whenever you're going through something difficult to even be like have the ability to laugh. And sometimes that's a little bit for me at least and for my family like we'll laugh in what a lot of families would consider super inappropriate moments.
Mhm.
And it's
Us
like
too, yeah.
that's just how our family is a little bit, but I think that that healing part of it comes in whenever you're laughing together. You're not laughing at each other.
Yes.
You're not laughing
Yes.
at someone else. You're laughing together at a situation. I think that that can still provide a little bit of healing, but yeah, that
Excuse me.
bless you. That yeah, the dark humor is fine. I think the self-deprecating humor and the humor at other
Yeah.
people's expense. You're right. That's a little bit different.
Well, and if all of the retelling of your trauma is done in this way that doesn't connect you, because that's the thing, is I may as well have been talking about somebody else. I didn't
Yeah.
connect to those experiences. So many of those jokes or the way I told those stories, I couldn't repeat those stories now without crying because I'm very connected to them. Like there have been times that I've even like said, I used to say this and talk about this experience, and that experience then would make me cry because I feel the emotion of it. I didn't feel the emotion when I went through it, let alone when I was retelling it. I had learned really well at a very young age how to shove things down. Really unaware of it, but that was the truth of it. So, yeah, I think as long as you're aware of what your intent is with the funny, that's all that matters.
Yeah. Now, Bite Mark couldn't be here tonight, but she sent this question ahead of time. She would like to know what is your favorite poem?
I have a couple. Right off the top of my head, I would say that how do you pronounce that? It's like why is it so hard? I think it's called something like
Desiderata.
desert yes.
Desiderata? Desiderata?
Yes.
I
Yeah, I'm
knew
like,
that was
I
gonna.
know
As
there's a
soon as you were like,
D.
I don't know how to pronounce, I was like, I'll bet I know which
Yes.
one she's talking about.
Yes. I love that's probably number one. And then I
Yes.
also love the why. The Two Roads poem. Who's that?
Uh,
John Frost, am I making that up?
the road less traveled by
Two
one.
yeah, the Two Roads in a Woods or whatever. I like
Yep.
that one a lot. And then I
Hmm.
also like that one that got really popular last year about met my younger self at a coffee shop or whatever. Like I met my younger
Oh.
self and um but like your younger self would didn't really like your older self because like you know what I mean? Like she was in her like if it were about me, I'd be like, she was in her, smoky makeup and Jinko jeans, having a cigarette, whatever. You know what I mean? But like, it was a small creator and it blew up. Like everybody made their own version of the poem. I really
Hmm.
liked that. But I haven't like read poetry in quite a while, but those are my like top favorites.
Yeah, The Road Not Taken is by Robert Frost. And then
Thank you.
Jenna Cecilia had a book called Deep in My Feels. And that poem starts off, I met my younger self for coffee at
Yes.
10:15, and then talks about an interaction and everything. Yeah, I actually haven't read all of this poem, so I'll take the time. It looks like a
Oh,
pretty
you'll
short
love
one.
it.
I'll take a minute and read that one after we're done here. But yeah, I love those. And it's so funny. As soon as you were like, "Oh, how do you pronounce that one?" I can't quite remember. I
You
was like,
knew,
I
yeah.
know which one you're talking because
It's
I
like,
did
is
the
it
same thing.
Desiderata?
Yes, yep, I did the same thing. I was like, wait, it's hold on, I can never remember how that
'Cause
one's
I can
spelled.
kinda see it in my mind, but then, I
Hmm.
start to jumble a couple of letters.
Yep, yep, and that one's by Max Ehrman.
Yes, 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 yes.
That's a great one too. Now, we are coming up on the last couple of questions. So, folks who are here tonight, if you have any questions for Melissa, feel free to drop them into the chat. We'll make sure to address them. But Melissa will continue with these last couple. So, what is your favorite life hack?
Ooh, favorite life hack. Gosh, I would have answered that so differently a few days ago. Let me think. I think just always coming back to center that you're human and you're
Hmm.
allowed. And like especially if you're into the woo like I am, anchor into the human experience. We are only tethered to the spiritual experience, but like we came here to have real human feelings, and so let's do that. Anchor in, allow. Resistance keeps you stuck, so stop resisting everything so much.
Yeah, that one's a good one. Well, it is time for our magic moment. I had to reach down and grab my magic wand. So, if you could wave a magic wand and eliminate one common opinion or misconception about mental illness, disabilities, or talking about mental health, what would it be?
I would erase performance that you have to show
Hmm.
up as anything other than who you want to be any given moment.
That's a big one.
Mhm.
Because boy, are we always performing all the time.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I mean, it's
Oh,
it's it's what we're ingrained to do, right?
yep, most definitely. Well, I am going to post your links one more time for folks who want to connect with you. And while I'm doing that, I'm just going to hand the floor to you and let you share anything that you want to, throw out any additional resources that you want to, or promote whatever you would like. So here you go.
Well, I'm super active on my Instagram, but on the link tree, it kind of gets you to any of the workbooks. I had been putting the workbooks out monthly. I didn't do one for obvious reasons in December. Plan to have another one out in January. They just kind of hit different themes. The truth is they kind of align with astrology for that month. Like, a Virgo season was about perfectionism. It's not like super tied, but it
Yeah.
gives me like a home base to start with something because I'm not like, if you are into human design, I'm a generator. So like I'm not really good at like creating. I'm more of a responder. So I can respond to the astrology of the month. And so I kind of do it that way. I'll probably be putting out much more grief resources, but on my link tree you will find anything I've ever done pretty much. Like I have my original little video workshop somewhere. It's either on my website or linked to like my Shopify, but I think I made that like $10. And so it's a very basic, if you're a person trying to learn to quiet the noise and connect to yourself, that's a really good resource. My website's on there. My show is probably the thing that means the very most to me. And so the links, like I have Spotify, Apple, and YouTube links on there for Emotionally Unavailable. I just started Unquiet Soul. Tomorrow releases episode 13. I didn't release a couple after Jake died, but we're back on track with those. But that's me and a co host that I met from my other show. And it's kind of similar, but like what we found is that we have like the exact same astrology because we're born a day apart, but she's a Scorpio rising and I am a Aries rising. So that's kind of the difference, but everything else is like the same, but our stuff is in different houses. But so we kind of touch briefly on astrology here and there. It's usually kind of a what are you learning this week? And so we're just kind of talking this stuff out loud versus Emotionally Unavailable is kind of the same thing, but they're kind of, the guest is kind of bringing the topic,
Mhm.
and then I just, the show really is about me and my growth and evolving because I'm a student, and so I'm still learning from people who come on, or we're just connecting and sharing and being lit up and having this synergetic exchange. But they both mean a lot to me, so I would love if you checked those out, and then I post clips of those all over the place. So my link, I don't know that I have a link to TikTok, but on TikTok, I'm Emotionally Unavailable Pod, I think. And then everything else is Malisa Hepner. So I would love if you became a listener. That's probably my main priority. But, also having a bit of trouble wanting to do things that make me like hustling for money right now. So like it's very supportive in this grief journey for people to join the Patreon or buy merch or buy a workbook, just to kind of continue to help me be afloat while I'm kind of rebuilding my identity after this huge loss. So throw that out there too. But yeah, all those links are at my link tree.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for this conversation. And I just really appreciate you taking the time and being here on a Monday evening. I'm always honored when people join me, and I'm doubly honored that you have taken the time in one of the hardest times of your life to come in here and share with us. I really, really deeply appreciate that.
Well, thank you. I've had such a good time with you.
Oh, that's awesome to hear all the time. Well, folks who are here, I will disconnect with Malisa offline. Stick around. I will be right back. I'm going to give you guys a puzzle to work on. But again, thank you for being here. Melissa, thank you guys, everybody who's here as part of Even Tacos Fall Apart community. Thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for being who you are. And I will be right back. Don't go anywhere.